On my wedding day, I found my father standing in a hallway with no seat. 200 guests were on the other side of that wall. The room was filled with white peonies, crystal vases, gold charger plates, and a 12-piece string ensemble. $85,000 worth of everything a wedding was supposed to look like. And Dave Marshall, the man who fixed pipes for 35 years so I could have a life, was standing in a hallway because someone had taken his seat away. That someone was my future mother-in-law, and the man I was about to marry knew about it since morning. What happened next, what I said, what I did, and what it cost the Whitfield family after I walked out, that is the story I am about to tell you. My name is Fonda Marshall. I am 30 years old, and this is the best decision I ever made on the worst day of my life. I grew up on Birch Lane in Millfield, Ohio, a two-bedroom house my father bought the year I was born and paid off in 22 years. He wrote the last check on my 16th birthday, then took us all to Dairy Queen to celebrate. My dad, Dave, fixed pipes for a living, 35 years with the same pair of steel-toed boots, resold 4 times. His knees went bad around year 20, his back followed around year 30, but I never once saw him miss a day when I was in school. He'd come home at 6, scrub the grease off his hands with that orange soap that smelled like gasoline and citrus, and ask me what I learned that day. My mom, Linda, worked the cafeteria line at Millfield Elementary. She served lunch to 400 kids a day and knew every single one by name. She knew which ones had peanut allergies, which ones were lactose intolerant, and which ones came to school hungry because there was no food at home. Those kids always got extra. We were not wealthy. I shared a bedroom wall with the water heater. My winter coat in 7th grade was my cousin's from 2 years before. But the door was always open, dinner was always hot, and my parents never once made me feel like I was missing anything. I paid off my student loans by 28, became a nurse practitioner at the community clinic on Route 9. I built that life with my own hands, but the foundation, that was Dave and Linda Marshall. I thought a family like that was enough for anyone. I was wrong. I met Garrett Whitfield 2 years before the wedding. His father came into the clinic for a routine physical, and Garrett drove him. He was leaning against the reception counter when I walked through with a chart. Tall, dark hair, the kind of jaw that looks like it was designed in a boardroom. He smiled at me, and I smiled back. The Whitfields were a different world. Real estate developers, 3 generations deep. Their name was on a subdivision, a commercial plaza, and a bronze plaque at the country club where they had been members for 25 years. The first time I met Constance Whitfield, she wore cream silk and pearl earrings the size of dimes. She shook my hand, looked me up and down, and said, "A community clinic, how interesting. Garrett used to date the Harrison girl, Dr. Harrison's daughter over at St. Luke's." She smiled when she said it, the kind of smile that isn't really a smile. I told myself that was just how people talked in those circles, stiff, performative. It didn't mean anything. Garrett squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "She'll warm up." She never did. But by then, I was already in love, and love has a way of making you explain away things you should be running from. Garrett proposed 14 months later. I said yes because the ring wasn't from Constance. It was from the man who drove 40 minutes to bring me soup when I had the flu, who texted me every morning, who said my parents were good people and that he couldn't wait to call Dave Dad. Then the wedding planning started, and the version of Garrett I thought I knew began to blur. Constance chose the venue, the Whitfield Country Club, not the little church on Maple Street where my parents were married. She chose the wedding planner, her friend Diane. She chose the menu, and when my mom suggested adding her fried chicken as an appetizer, Constance tilted her head and said, "That's sweet, Linda, but this is a seated dinner, not a potluck." My mother laughed it off. I saw the way her hands tightened in her lap. Every time I pushed back, Garrett had the same answer. "Let Mom have this one, babe. After the wedding, it's just us." I made a calculated decision. Lose the small battles now, win the war later. The venue didn't matter. The menu didn't matter. What mattered was the marriage. the 40 years after the party. That was my logic. I didn't know then that the small battles weren't small. They were rehearsals. Constance was testing how far she could push, and I kept giving ground. June 14th, 6 in the morning. I woke up in my old bedroom at my parents' house. Sunlight through the curtains my mom sewed when I was 12. My dress hung on the closet door. Ivory satin, tea-length, bought with my own savings. Constance had suggested a designer gown from a boutique in Columbus. I declined. This was the one thing I kept. By 10, I was at the Whitfield Country Club. The place looked like a magazine spread. White peonies in crystal vases, ivory linens, gold charger plates at every seat, 300 candles, and a 12-piece string ensemble warming up in the garden. 200 guests were expected, half from the Whitfield side, business associates, country club members, the mayor's wife. The other half were mine, my Aunt Grace from Akron, nurses from the clinic, my college roommate, old neighbors from Birch Lane, people who drove pickup trucks and wore department store dresses and didn't know what a charger plate was. I noticed the imbalance early. The Whitfield guests filled the front rows and center tables. My people were scattered towards the edges. After the ceremony, while guests moved to the cocktail hour on the terrace, I slipped into the reception hall to check the final setup. Call it habit. I'm a nurse. I verify everything twice. Table 1, the head table, directly in front of the dance floor, set for 10. That was where both sets of parents were supposed to sit, along with Garrett's grandmother and my Aunt Grace. I walked to table 1 and picked up the first place card. Gerald Whitfield. I picked up the next one. Lydia Whitfield. Thomas Whitfield. Mr. and Mrs. Porter. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson. Patricia Whitfield Ross. Gerald Whitfield Jr. 9 Whitfields and their associates. No Marshalls. My chest tightened. I started checking every table. Table 2, Whitfield cousins. Table 3, country club members. I kept going. Table 10, table 12. I found them at table 14, the last table, tucked against the far wall next to the swinging kitchen door. I could hear pots clanging on the other side. The chairs weren't the polished mahogany that matched the rest of the room. They were padded folding chairs, the backup kind. A service cart with dirty glasses sat 2 feet away. The overhead light was dimmer than all the others because it was a utility fixture, not a chandelier. Dave Marshall, Linda Marshall. I stared at those 2 place cards, gold ink on cream stock, sitting next to a trash can with a foot pedal. I found the wedding coordinator near the bar. Who changed the seating chart? She didn't blink. Mrs. Whitfield adjusted it this morning. She said the bride approved. I never approved anything. I stood in that reception hall alone and did what I'd been trained to do in the emergency room. Triage. Table 14, swinging kitchen door, clanging pots, folding chairs, a trash can with a foot pedal 2 feet from where my father would eat his daughter's wedding dinner. If I said nothing, here is what would happen. My parents would sit there. They wouldn't complain. My dad would straighten his tie, the one he bought in 2009, the only good one he owned, and he'd smile and say, "It's fine, sweetheart." My mom would fold her napkin in her lap and pretend she couldn't hear the dishwashers running 6 feet behind her head. And Constance would know. She'd know she could move Dave and Linda Marshall anywhere she wanted, the back of the room, the parking lot, out of the frame entirely, and no one would say a word. Every Thanksgiving after this, every Christmas, every grandchild's birthday, Dave and Linda would always be table 14. I thought about my dad's hands, 35 years of copper pipe and joint compound. He saved 6 months to buy that suit. My mom's dress, she sewed it herself, altered an old one, added lace at the sleeves, replaced the zipper. 3 weekends of work. I'd watched her hunched over the sewing machine in the spare room, pins between her lips, squinting at the bobbin. These people fed me, raised me, drove through snowstorms to get me to school, and someone decided they belonged next to a trash can. I went to find Garrett. I thought he'd fix it. I thought he'd be angry on my behalf. I was wrong. He was standing in front of a full-length mirror adjusting his cufflinks. Silver, monogrammed, a gift from Constance. Who moved my parents off the head table? He didn't look up from the mirror. Mom rearranged some things this morning. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? They don't have seats, Garrett. Table 14 is next to the kitchen, next to the trash. He sighed, the kind of sigh a person makes when they think you're being difficult. We have 200 guests out there. Can we not do this right now? When then? After dinner? After they've already sat there for 3 hours? He turned from the mirror. His face was calm, patient, the face of a man who'd practiced looking reasonable while saying unreasonable things. Baby, you're stressed. It's your wedding day. Let's get through dinner and I'll talk to Mom tomorrow. Tomorrow. That was always the answer. Tomorrow after the engagement party. Tomorrow after the shower. Tomorrow after the wedding. Tomorrow never came. I searched his face for something. Anger, guilt, surprise. Anything that would tell me he hadn't known about this until right now. There was nothing. No surprise, no outrage. He had known since morning. He'd gotten dressed, fixed his cufflinks, and checked his hair in the mirror. I walked out. I still had one more door to open. Near the entrance, a stack of printed programs sat in a neat row next to the guest book. I picked one up and opened it. Page 2. With love and gratitude to our families, Richard and Constance Whitfield, Gerald and Lydia Whitfield, Thomas Whitfield, the Whitfield Family Foundation. 4 lines, all Whitfield. I checked the back. I checked inside the fold. Dave and Linda Marshall were nowhere. In the version I'd approved 3 weeks ago, my parents were listed first. With deepest love to Dave and Linda Marshall, whose sacrifices made all of this possible. I had written those words myself. Constance had waited until the morning of the wedding and had Diane reprint them. My parents' names, erased, not just from the table, from the record. I walked out. I still had one more door to open. Near the entrance, a stack of printed programs sat in a neat row next to the guest book. I picked one up and opened it. Page 2. With love and gratitude to our families, Richard and Constance Whitfield, Gerald and Lydia Whitfield, Thomas Whitfield, the Whitfield Family Foundation. 4 lines, all Whitfield. I checked the back. I checked inside the fold. Dave and Linda Marshall were nowhere. In the version I'd approved 3 weeks ago, my parents were listed first. With deepest love to Dave and Linda Marshall, whose sacrifices made all of this possible. I had written those words myself. Constance had waited until the morning of the wedding and had Diane reprint them. My parents' names, erased, not just from the table, from the record. I found my maid of honor, Margot, near the bridesmaids' room. One look at my face and she set down her lipstick. I told her everything. The table, the program, Garrett's reaction. 30 seconds, no pauses. Margot didn't flinch. She just closed her lipstick cap, put it in her clutch, and looked at me. What do you want to do? I don't know yet. What do you need from me? Stay close. I'm right here, Fawn. I'm right here. On my way back through the corridor, I stopped outside the groomsmen's suite. The door was cracked open 3 or 4 inches, enough to hear everything. Constance's voice first, low, controlled, the way she always sounded when she was most dangerous. Garrett, look at her father. That suit is from 2005. And her mother? Did she sew that dress herself? They look poor. You cannot have them sitting at the front table. Our guests will think, I know, Mom. The Hendersons are sitting right there, Jim Porter and his wife. These are the people who matter, Garrett, not a plumber and a lunch lady. A pause. You're right. The Marshalls are fine in the back. It's more appropriate. Then Constance, quieter. You should have listened to me from the start. She doesn't belong here. She doesn't belong here? I pressed my hand against the wall. The hallway tilted. I heard my own pulse in my ears, hard, slow, like a door being locked from the inside. My father, the man who spent 35 years on his knees under kitchen sinks, who drove 4 hours round trip every weekend to visit me in college because he thought the dining hall food wasn't enough. A plumber and a lunch lady. That's what they called him. That's what they called her. And the man I was supposed to spend my life with said, "You're right." There are sentences you cannot unhear. This wasn't one of them. I pushed the door open. Constance turned first. Her face froze half a second, then rearranged itself into that smile, the one that looked like hospitality but felt like a locked gate. "Fonda, sweetheart, you look stunning." I heard everything. Garrett's jaw tightened. "Heard what? We were just—" "Dad looks poor. Mom sewed her dress. They don't belong at the front table." I held his gaze. What part did I misunderstand? Constance stepped forward, hands clasped, the chairwoman posture. "Fonda, this is just a seating arrangement. You called my father a plumber like it was an insult. You called my mother a lunch lady like she should be ashamed of it." Garrett tried. "You're emotional right now, Fonda. It's your wedding day. Let's take a breath." "I am breathing, Garrett. I've never been more clear." He stayed on his feet for 3 more seconds. Then Constance pulled his sleeve and he sank back into his chair. And he didn't come after me. That was the last answer I needed. I went straight to table 14, sat down next to my parents, not in the chair assigned to me at the sweetheart table, right here between the kitchen door and the service cart. Mom looked at me, confused. "Honey, you should be up front." "My family's here, so I'm here." Dad studied my face. He could tell when I was about to do something. "Fonda, don't do anything on our account." "I'm not doing this for you, Dad. I'm doing this for me." Across the room, I found Margot's eyes. I gave a single nod. She nodded back. Then she reached under the table, grabbed her clutch, and stood up. I took one breath, then another. Then I walked to the stage. 60 feet, about 30 seconds. My heels clicked on the polished hardwood, a sharp, steady rhythm like a metronome counting down. Conversations faded table by table as I walked. By the time I reached the stage, the room was almost silent. The MC saw me coming and stepped back. I took the microphone from his hand. I looked out at the room. 200 faces, crystal glasses, white linens, Constance at table 1, champagne in hand, Garrett beside her, and my parents behind me, table 14, the last table. "Thank you all for being here today." My voice came through the speakers, clear and level. No tremor, no tears. 7 years in emergency rooms teaches you how to stay steady when everything is falling apart. Most of you know me as Garrett's fiancé, but before I was that, and after tonight, I am Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter. I pointed toward the back of the room. My parents are sitting at table 14. I'd like everyone to look at table 14 for a moment. 200 heads turned. All of them. Their eyes swept to the back corner, past the bar, past the dessert station, past the kitchen door, and found Dave and Linda Marshall sitting at a folding table between a service cart and a trash bin. I watched the reactions move through the room like weather. Confusion first, then recognition, then the slow tightening of faces as people understood what they were looking at. Jim Henderson put down his fork. His wife pressed her mouth to a muff. At table 1, Constance's smile hardened into something ceramic. Her hand gripped the stem of her champagne flute. 12 hours ago, my parents were seated at this table, table 1, right here in front, where the families of the bride and groom are supposed to sit. That was the seating chart I approved. I let that sit. This morning, that changed. Someone walked into this room and replaced every place card at the head table. My parents were removed and reassigned to the last seat in the house, next to the kitchen, next to the service entrance, next to the trash. I paused. That person was Constance Whitfield. Every head at table 1 turned toward her. Constance sat perfectly still, chin lifted, but the color had left her face. Richard looked down at the tablecloth and didn't move. When I confronted my fiancé, he told me to not make a scene, and when I heard him speak privately to his mother, he said, and these are his exact words, "The Marshalls are fine in the back. The Hendersons and Porters are more important." Jim Henderson pushed back from the table, not dramatically, just enough to create distance between himself and the Whitfields. Garrett stood up. "Fonda, that's not— You're twisting— Sit down, Garrett." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You had your chance to stand up for my family. You chose not to." He stayed on his feet for 3 more seconds. Then Constance pulled his sleeve, and he sat back down. "Let me tell you about the people who were moved to table 14. I turned slightly, just enough to see my father in my peripheral vision, sitting upright, hands on the table, eyes fixed on me. My father, Dave Marshall, fixed pipes for 35 years. He has 2 bad knees and 1 good suit, the one he is wearing right now. He saved 6 months for it. A woman at table 9 pressed a napkin to her eyes. My mother, Linda Marshall, serves lunch to 400 kids every school day at Millfield Elementary. She knows every child by name. She knows who's allergic to peanuts, who can't have dairy, and who comes to school hungry. Those kids always get extra. I turned back to face the front tables. My parents put $12,000 toward this wedding. They saved it over 15 years from a plumber's pension and a cafeteria worker's paycheck. That money covered the catering deposit. I let the math settle over the room. People looked at their plates, at their wine glasses, at the seared salmon and the butternut bisque. Every plate you're eating tonight, my parents paid for it. I looked directly at Constance, and you put them next to the garbage. The room fractured. Gasps, a sharp intake of breath. Vivian, Constance's friend, put 6 inches between her and the woman she had been laughing with 20 minutes ago. From the back, someone stood up, then Nurse Patricia, then my Aunt Grace. They didn't say anything. They just stood, like witnesses. Constance opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I came here today to start a marriage, a partnership, a life built on mutual respect. My voice didn't crack. I wouldn't let it. Not here. Not in front of her. I reached up and unpinned my veil, folded it once, twice, 3 times, set it on the edge of the stage, neatly, the way my mother taught me to fold things with care, even when you're letting go. To the guests from Millfield, thank you for driving here. Thank you for celebrating with my family. We're going home. I looked at Constance one last time. To the Whitfields, I wish you well, genuinely, but I deserve better than a man who sits in silence while his mother calls my father poor, and my parents deserve better than table 14. I set the microphone on the stand, gently, no slam, no drop, just placed it the way you put down a tool when the job is finished. I stepped off the stage and walked to the back of the room, my heels on the hardwood again, that same steady rhythm, 60 feet. This time, nobody talked over it. Dad stood when I reached him. Mom was crying, quiet tears, the kind she always tried to hide. I hugged them both, right there between the folding chairs and the kitchen door. Margot appeared with my coat and my bag. She had already called a car. We walked out, the 4 of us, past the dessert station, past the string quartet which had stopped playing, past 200 silent faces. Behind me, I heard Constance's voice, brittle and loud. She's lost her mind. And Garrett calling, "Fonda, Fonda, wait!" I didn't wait. The door closed behind us, and the last sound I heard was my own breathing. That night, I sat at the kitchen table in my parents' house, the same table I'd done homework on since 3rd grade, Formica top, chrome legs, that chip in the corner from when I dropped a cast-iron skillet in high school. Mom made her fried chicken, the recipe Constance cut from the wedding menu, mashed potatoes from scratch, corn on the cob because Elise likes to hold it even though she doesn't have enough teeth to eat it. Margot is here, and Patricia, who brings pie every Sunday and claims it's because she bakes too much. Nobody believes her. Nobody cares. Elise is in Dad's lap, grabbing at his glasses. He lets her. He always lets her. He leans down close and says, quiet like he's sharing a secret, "Your grandpa used to fix pipes for this whole town. Now I just fix things for you." She throws a spoon on the floor. Everyone laughs. I look around the table. The overhead light buzzes a little. Dad says he'll fix it next week. The wallpaper in the hall is peeling at the seam. There's a draft from the back door that Mom covers with a rolled towel from November to March. No champagne, no crystal, no $85,000 venue. But every person at this table chose to be here. Every person belongs. And nobody is sitting next to the garbage. This is my table 1.
I'm not telling you this story to teach you anything. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's breaking point is different. But if you're sitting at a table 14 right now, if there is a room in your life where you're always in the back, always near the door, always made to feel like you should be grateful for the chair instead of asking why it's next to the garbage, I want you to know something. You can stand up. You don't need a microphone. You don't need 200 witnesses. You just need to know, past the doubt, past the guilt, past the voice that says don't make trouble, that the people you love deserve better. And if the person you chose agrees when someone calls your family poor, that person didn't choose you. They chose comfort. They chose the easier version of love, the kind that doesn't require courage. That is not love. That's a seating chart. My name is Fonda Marshall. I am Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter, and my daughter has never once sat at a table where she didn't belong. If you've ever had to stand up for your family, drop table 1 in the comments. If you think I made the right call, tell me. If you think I was wrong, tell me that too. And would you have answered Richard's letter? That's one I'm still figuring out myself. If you're new here and this story stayed with you, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.